Aengus Og was the Celtic god of love, and everybody loved Aengus. He was so handsome. He had beautiful golden curls and deep hazel eyes and a smile that would melt the heart of anyone who saw him. As I say, everybody loved him, and wherever he walked, well, the flowers, they would just burst into bloom. And when he passed the crops in the fields, they would ripen immediately. And the cattle, the cattle, whenever they encountered him, they would produce the sweetest, richest, creamiest of milk ever to have been drunk in Ireland. And he had a golden voice. And whenever he sang, well, the birds, they would sing back. And between them both, they would create the most magical and healing of music ever to have been heard. And this was a good time in Ireland, and he lived with his mother and father, Boann, his mother, the great cow goddess, she who gives her name to the River Boyne, and his father, Andaya, the good god. And they lived in what's known today as Newgrange, or Brú na Bóinne. All was well in Ireland in these times. There was abundance, prosperity, peace. But then, one day, a strange illness befell Aengus Og. And all he could do was lie in his bed. And his parents, they called the druids, the Mná Fasa, the healers, the herbalists. Not one of them could diagnose what it was that ailed him or find a remedy. And he would say, "Leave me be. All I want to do is lie in my bed and sleep." Well, this produced a great problem because all the flowers, they stopped blooming. And the crops, they withered in the fields, and the birds no longer sang, and the cattle stopped producing milk. And this dark, dark shadow came over the island of Ireland. And Aengus Og's parents were worried not only for the well-being of their son, but also for the integrity and well-being of the land of Ireland and its people. Then one day, a wise bondree, a druidess, came to visit Brú na Bóinne. And Boann asked her and said, "Will you please go in to our son? Maybe you can divine what it is that ails him, and maybe you can find a cure." And the bondree went into the chamber where Aengus Og was, lying there in the bed. And she took one look at him and said, Joaquin, you have the look of a man suffering from unrequited love." And weak and all as Aengus Og was, he sat up in the bed and he said, "That's exactly it. Every night I sleep, and a beautiful woman comes to me in my dreams with long golden hair and eyes as blue as the sky at midsummer and lips as red as yewberries. And I look into her eyes and she looks into mine and I smile at her. And she smiles at me and I reach out my hand to her. And she reaches out her hand to mine, and just as we're about to touch, she disappears. Night after night, she comes to me in my dreams. Night after night, she torments me by disappearing. And all I want to do is sleep in the hope that she'll come back to me once more. But I cannot live without this woman's love in my life. Do you know who she is?" asking the bondree. And the woman said, "I have no idea. But I think I know somebody who might. Bóv Jarrag. He was another king of the Tuatha Dé Danann, and he had his dún, his fort. It's in what's known today as Sliabh na Món, the Mountain of the Women." And the bondree said, "If there's anyone who knows who this young woman is, it'll be Bóv Jarrag." So they set off the next day, and when they arrived at the dún of Bóv Jarrag, they had a great welcome, in keeping with the laws of hospitality in those times. And he prepared a great banquet, where there was nuagach bí as seangach dí, the freshest of food and the oldest of drink. And when they'd eaten and drunk their fill, then the bards came, the storytellers, the harpers, the musicians, the poets. And when the entertainment was over, it was only then, again in keeping with the laws of hospitality, did Bóv Jarrag say, "What brings you to my dún?" And Aengus told him about the beautiful woman coming to him in his dreams with the long golden hair and eyes as blue as the sky at midsummer and lips as red as yewberries. "Can you tell me who she is? I cannot live without her. Love, I don't want to live without her in my life. Please tell me who she is." "Well," says Bóv, "indeed I do know who this young woman is. She is Caer Yewberry. She refused a proposal from a sorcerer, an Asor. And as a result and in revenge, he has condemned her to spend half her life as a swan and the other half as a human. I don't care," says Aengus Og. "Be she swan or be she human, I need her love. I need her in my life. Please, where can I find her? Well, she can be found at Loch on Dragon, the lake of the dragon's mouth, which is known as Loch Muskerry today, high up in the Galtee Mountains. And he said the best time to find her is at Samhain time. It so happened it was 3 days before Samhain. So they set off as soon as they could, and it took them 3 days and 3 nights to get to the foothills of the Galtee Mountains. And then they walked up through forests of oak and ash and rowan, and then out onto open moorland, a more desolate place you've never seen. Nothing growing there, no sounds but the howling wind and the call of the ravens, the gatekeepers of that place. And Aengus, as he was walking with the Bondry on one side and the Ove Jarrag on the other, weakly walking, putting one step in front of the other, looking, scanning the horizon, maybe he might lay his eye on his love Caer. Nothing. And he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked, with the 2 people beside him encouraging him. And he was just about to lose all hope when they went around a boulder, and there before them was Loch on Dragon, the lake of the dragon's mouth. And weak and all as he was able to summon up one last piece of energy, run down the path and stand on the sandy shore as he looked at the grey lake that was only matched by the grey of the sky. And looking at the bleak cliffs on the other side of the lake, again he scanned the sky and the horizon. No sign of Caer. And he called out to her and he said, Caer, Caer, come to me. Please, I promise you I will never own you, control you or possess you. Be you swan or be you human, I will accept you for you, who you truly are. Know this, I cannot live without your love. I do not want to live without you in my life. And he watched and he watched and he watched. And just as he was beginning to lose all hope, suddenly across the horizon, 9 swans come, all joined by a silver chain. And he watched as the lead swan broke away from the others. And he watched as she began to fly closer and closer, lower and lower. And as her webbed foot touched the surface of the water, she regained her human form, and there before him was the woman of his dreams with the long golden hair, eyes as blue as the sky at midsummer, and lips as red as yewberries. And he smiled at her and he said, Caer, you've come to me. She smiled at him, and he reached out his hand to her, and she reached out his hand to him. And just as they were about to touch, she pulls back and takes to the sky once more as a swan. He is broken-hearted, and he watches her fly away, and he said for the second time, Caer, please come to me. I promise you I will never own you, control you, or possess you. I will accept you for who you truly are, be you swan or be you human. Know this, I cannot live without your love. I do not want to live without you in my life. And he watched as she flew again around the lake, and then she turned and she began to fly closer and closer and lower, and once again as her webbed foot touches the surface of the water, she regained her human form. You've come back to me. And he smiled at her, and she smiled at him, and again he reached out his hand to her, and she reached out his hand to his, and just as they were about to touch, for a second time she pulled away, took to the air again as a swan. He was devastated, he was broken-hearted, and he called out to her for a third time, Caer, please do not torment me anymore. Come to me. I promise you I will never own you, control you, or possess you. I will accept you for who you truly are, be you swan or be you human. I cannot live without you in my life. And he watched as she flew again, and turned closer and closer and lower, and again as her webbed foot touched the surface of the lake, she regained her human form. This time she looked him directly in the eye, and he looked into hers, and it was as if they'd known each other forever. She reached out her hand, smiling. He reached out his hand to her, and this time she pulled him, and they took to the air, both as swans, and they became joined by a golden chain. And they flew 3 times around that lake, and they sang their love song. And then for 3 days and 3 nights they flew around the island of Ireland, singing their song of love. And all who heard that song fell into the deepest of sleeps, where they too dreamt of love, acceptance, joy, peace, wholeness. And at the end of the 3rd day they flew back to Brúnaboinne, where they're there to this very day.